What is up, ladies and gentlemen? I'm Silver the Hedgehog here, and I'm from the likes of the Mexi Toys videos. It's no use! Anyway, let's just not talk about that specific joke already, or even overused joke already. So either way though, that's as far as I'm most likely concerned of. So anyways, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for some more of Let's Play of Rayman Raving Rabbids for the Nintendo Wii, PlayStation 2, excuse me, PlayStation 2 / Xbox 360. So anyway, and also the PC version as well, if you want to count that version. So, anyways, last time we have managed to able to play another set of mini games ranging from the forms of the next 10 mini games as far as the actual total amounts we can able to go through, and also that we did manage to able to went through day 10 all the way up to day 11. So today we're about to begin with, not only for the sake of the forms of the next selections of mini games in journey forms of day 12, but also we might as well able to do the next 5 mini games in day 13 as well. So we figure we might as well able to actually do those days, and then when we're done with those, that eventually at this point until tomorrow, that spoiler warning for those who have not noticing for this fact, we might actually conclude this Let's Play in particularly for this particular weekend. So here we go with the first minigame on day number 12 is Bunnies Don't Understand Bowling, that we need to win about 150 points by smashing the bunnies, or in this case Rabbids. So think of Wii Sports, but with the forms of trying to able to not only just to knock down those Rabbids, but also trying to utilize the barrel as act out the actual bowling kind of scenario. So either way, it's pretty simple. You just have to basically just flick the Wiimote forward and take it in notice from Bowl Over from Mario Party 2 that, and especially Mario Party 1, they can able to actually just to maneuver the actual barrel by able to tilting the actual remote. Which, kind of think about it, it's more likely a combination of both Mario Party 1 Bowl Over as well as Mario Party 2 Bowl Over, because I say that because usually in Mario Party 2 and Bowl Over, that you get like 2 goes in a team of 1, whilst in a team of 3 needs to avoid the actual shell before getting hit. But a noticeable difference this time is the fact that, well, usually the Rabbids don't even move at all, so they stand on one place, and that's all there is to know. But it's nothing usually, nothing right to home about, because, you know, it plays almost exactly like how it did in Bowl Over from the likes of Mario Party 1 and Mario Party 2. But even then, I just want to make that as a nice little reference there. So, anyways, let's move on to the next minigame on day number 12. Now it appears to be... oh god, Bunnies Can't Slide Part 2. Looks like we're going back into this minigame again, aren't we? But the biggest difference is this time is the fact that rather than just having like 3 each goes within the actual repeated going all over again, like the amount of total distance for that particular point, unlike in part 1, whilst in this particular minigame this time around is the fact that you need to get closest to the target within 3 turns within a single go. So even then though, like for instance, we got a little bit further away from the target on the first turn, but thankfully though you'll be still in place, and that way you can able to, well, get into the proper target from here, such as this part right here. But if someone managed to get into the actual hole, as you can see this time around, they'll be out immediately. So even then though, that's the only thing you need to be careful of, especially noticeable how the fact that that will be the only hardest part about that minigame. But apart from those side of things though, this minigame is miles easier than the forms of how it does it on part 1, just because, well, you have to deal with the forms of the total amount of distances in between 3 rounds. So even then though, that's no longer an issue for this point here. So even then though, that's pretty much as far as I can say about it. So a few things we want to explain about... no, don't go back that way, you stupid nunchuck. Yeah, I'm gonna have to get a little bit more of a reworking, adjustable thing with my nunchuck at this point these days. But either way though, I'm guessing it's probably because it's, you know, it's a little bit more aged at this point. So, I totally forgot that you can't able to replay the minigames again, I just realized. Despite the fact that the actual doorway was actually blacked out compared to its light. Oh man, I totally did not notice that. Bunnies aren't not obscurate. Arrange 10 super bunnies less than about a minute. So we have a new minigame here, so we need to turn the Wiimote left and right while simply riding the saucer, and then press the A button to lower the actual grappling hook, so that way you can able to actually free those super bunnies out of the actual ground, as you can see right there on this little cinematics right there. So yeah, self-explanatory for the most part. Okay, if you can't tell already, this attempt is well, I would say my attempt for this minigame is my 5th attempt of this minigame, because not only just because of the forms of, the early days of the motion controls as far as I'm aware, but also the fact that the annoying part about this minigame for me though, about the fact that this particular bunny, or the rabbit rather, that has like a head bandage on its head, it constantly tries to follow you at all times, so basically because he just got distracted by the actual crane kind of scenario. So basically in this particular minigame, as I said before, we need to rescue about 10 of those super bunnies before the actual time limit will reach for about a minute. But as soon as you succeed, then you would able to actually just move along to the next minigame and beyond. So even then, it's not much right to home about. So yeah, today is the forms of the 7th of March today in 2020. So in this case, about the fact that tomorrow, that the Kirby's Extra Epic Yarn game for the Nintendo 3DS will almost become 1 year old until tomorrow, despite I have not actually played that version for quite a lot, unlike the Wii version, just because, well, to be honest with you guys, because I was pretty much busy just playing something else entirely. So either way, now let's go ahead and move on to the next dancing minigame, which this time around is basically a continuation of the exact same song as in new forms of the first part, but now it's going to make things a little bit more difficult for ourselves, for not only just trying to able to pull up with the timing on the notes, but also the actual motion controls I have issues with, like for instance with the actual my glitched out nunchuck, as I said this countless amount of times from before, but hopefully it won't give us that much trouble, I don't think, but even then we'll have to wait and see what happens there. So either way, not much has been going on, I'm afraid, guys, in terms of, for this point today, specifically the 7th of March, specifically, during the forms of today's update. Sadly, there's actually quite a few amounts of those bad news as far as I'm aware, but let's get the good stuff out of the way first. Recently, that I'm presuming that I actually have not mentioned about this, especially how I would say Defi or anyone for that matter has not even mentioned of that during the forms of throughout the majority of February, that recently in the UK that we've actually got ourselves our new £20 note has been running on. So even then, I've managed able to got the first one of the actual £20 notes, the newer ones, and as far as I actually see the actual details of that, it felt pretty much exactly similar to the new fiver, to the new tenner. So even then, the only ones that needs left now when it comes to the new stuff, which there are the £2 coins redesigned and also the £50 notes, which it might take a long time, probably because of how the fact that in terms of the actual government might need to get some new works planning. So even then, it might seems true or not, but then again, this is all completely new to me when it comes to certain stuff like that. So unfortunately, I did have several mistakes on this minigame, as you can see right there, but it does not even matter to me though, because we did manage to not only reach for a certain amount of points, but it's also the fact that we did manage to able to, well, pass this particular minigame right here. So even then, that pretty much takes care of it from here. So even then, it's not too difficult or anything like that, although until whenever we get towards the end of the game though, expecting to make things a little bit difficult for ourselves, but then again, no, we're not going to mention about that specifically just yet. So either way, that takes care of the forms of that particular minigame, and before we're able to do anything like this, I think we might actually unlock considerably the final costume of the game, which appears to be the bunny costume, or in this case, the rabbit costume. So it looks a little bit more goofy-like, but we'll change into that until whenever we get onto day 13. So race good, well, I do apologize for that worst English. Race good, like bunnies. So does that make the compromise as the English of that particular title? Anyway, for this particular minigame, as you can see right there, we still come across into the actual racing segments once again, except now, we don't have to worry about the forms of the competitor racers this time around. So it's just a matter of, like, reach for a certain amount of time. Specifically, I would say a minute and 45 seconds they need to beat. So naturally speaking, there's not much else to discuss upon for this minigame. And also, if you can clearly tell on screen, we're actually going to be racing onto the forms of the same course as in, I would say in day 12, or no, it's not day 12, like day 6 if I recall. That basically we managed to able to actually walk around for this entire track all over again, except now, as you can see, that we're actually going to be racing in reverse. So either way, that was a little bit different, all things considered, just because of how the fact that, well, at this point in time, that we're actually getting quite close towards the end for this trip, basically. So we still need to be able to race for the actual entire portion of this within 3 laps still. But the only things you need to avoid at all costs is, of course, the actual bunnies themselves, or the Rabbids, I should say, until you're able to actually realize that it will tend to slow you down if you keep on bump into those guys. So even then though, that's as far as I can usually try to think about it for this point. And also, just like always, make sure you need to save the actual super boost ability wisely, so just in case you weren't able to make it in time. So naturally speaking, that's all I can really say about this minigame in particular. In fact, this might actually be one of the shortest days throughout, assuming about the fact that if you're trying to able to figure out the actual minigame mechanics, or even the controls for that matter. So even then, though, it's not too shabby for the most part. So even then, I think that pretty much takes care of the forms of day number 12. So yeah, that seems pretty fast. And also, as you can clearly hear in the background, we have ourselves a different victory theme this time around, because in addition to having a lot more Rabbids into the crowd, we also, if we manage to obtain the next plunger, as you can see in the background, we now have fireworks in the background, which makes it a little bit more visually appealing, but even then, that's one thing I need to compromise as such when it comes to graphical standpoints. And now we are moving on to day number 13, and let's just say this right now, we'll change it on to the forms of the new costumes, such as, of course, the bunny outfit. So even then though, let's see how this will able to wear as such, and even then, we now ended up becoming a full-on rabbit, basically, except with the fact that with these little eyes, they all seem to get a little bit wobbly at points, but either way though, that's just coincidence anyway. So either way, let us begin the next 5 of those mini games. So even then, here we go on to day 13 for reals. So yeah, I seriously can't even believe that we almost pretty much done with this basically. But even then though, despite the fact that it depends on how quick these sessions will be. But then again though, we'll see what happens there until whenever we're able to jump right into the forms of those mini games. So here we go on to the first mini game on day number 13. So let's see what we got. As soon as the actual loading screens has been done. Bunnies are slow to react part 3, where it's basically the exact same minigame as before. Except, well, you still need to aim for exactly the same time as in part 2. But the biggest difference is now is the fact that the actual, the tilting course is actually a lot different this time around. In addition to having those bumpers, or these little bunchy bumpers as you can see. To make things easier for yourself, you can also utilize those particular gates that I did not even know at first, but it wasn't until I discovered that you can able to actually break through those gates, so that way you can able to actually perform the nice little shortcuts if you're trying to able to perform it that way. So either way, definitely really recommend you do that, because otherwise if you're trying to do this normally, then you're probably going to be running out of time. So either way though, just like usual, make it towards the end of a goal within a certain amount of time, then you would able to actually accomplish this minigame after all. So either way, yeah, everything's all comes together basically with all these mini games and all that stuff. So now we're going to be moving on to the next new mini game. Oh yeah, before we mention about the forms of the next set of mini-games that we'd like to discuss, unfortunately though, the bad news about the forms of today though, or even especially noticeable during, I would say on Thursday, that I'm presuming that Piglet has not mentioned about that ever since in his Yoshi's Crafted World basically. That, actually, before I even mention about that, let us begin with the next new minigame, which this time around is a continuation of Bunnies Can't Jump Part 2, so even then though, let's do the same thing from here. Okay, attempt number 7 if I recall for this minigame actually, because basically this time around you have to do multitasking basically, except, well, the only difference is from the forms of the first part as opposed to in part 2, that you have to jump with the nunchuck and you have to able to spin the actual rope within the Wii remote in a full circle this time around, which makes things a little bit harder than the forms of how it does it on part 1, but it only took me about 8 attempts on that specific minigame, like 7 of them which I did somehow fail most of the time during cut footage, and the 8th attempt on the other hand though, I did manage to succeed for that, so but then again though, is what makes the actual minigames continuation parts gets a little bit more tricky and difficult this time around, so I guess that makes it totally obvious for that specific difficulty won't get increased every time. But anyways, let's move on to the next minigame. Despite the fact that we actually ended up on the unlucky 13th day, of course. But then again, though, it's just a little bit of a coincidence. So, Bunnies Have No Memory Part 2, where it's basically like the same thing ever since in Part 1. Except now, there's actually a tough guy involved. So either way, though, that once again we need to memorize the actual sequences here, just like before. But except the fact that you now need to memorize this particular tough guy now. So either way, there's not much anything else difference-wise, but apart from the fact that you can able to see one additional thing with this particular part than part 1, so... But that's how it goes, basically. But once again, you need to aim for 40 points in order to proceed, so that way, if you manage to memorize all that kinds of stuff, then you would deal with it no problem. So even then, there's not much else I can say about it. So anyway though, something that's like usually a bad news about the films of recently, that unfortunately though, that the new James Bond film, No Time to Die, originally it was expected to able to release until likely in the 3rd of April in the UK. Unfortunately though, it has been delayed once again, except this time around though it makes it a lot worse because of the forms of, well, it's now going to be releasing on 12th of November, which... kind of think about it, in the 12th of November day, it marks the 10th anniversary of Sonic Colors, by the way, for the Wii and Nintendo DS, by the way, for those of you interested with those specific stuff, by the way. So, because of the reason why that delay was actually 8 months later than ever before, because of that, once again, the coronavirus is screwing us up again. You know why I'm going to be ranting up on the forms of that stupid coronavirus effect, which I'm sure most people seem to get really ticked off from that, especially how the fact that they're really looking forward to see the new James Bond film since Spectre in 2015, despite with some mixed reception for this throughout. So it's pretty sad about the fact that No Time to Die has been delayed once again, but except now it's going to be releasing on 12th of November in... It's still going to be in 2020's release, but unfortunately though we have to wait until 8 months now, which is super ridiculous, which I was going to say that, well, I'm pretty sure that the coronavirus is going to get much worse and worse and worse as when the days nearby. Especially how the fact that, well, it still was a thing after all, which even then, I'm probably not going to catch the actual coronavirus after all. In fact, let me know in the comments below about the fact that how you're going to be feeling about that effect will be continuous, because let me tell you, stay safe, because otherwise if you catch the coronavirus, oh, we'll be screwed. We'll be screwed if we caught one of them. So even then, I suggest for you, most people out there, be safe, because either way though, that really does help you a lot, because otherwise, that, you know, and stay hydrated for the most part, because that way you would able to actually make your life a little bit more better for yourself. Especially it really doesn't help about the fact that we still have not gotten any single of those Nintendo Directs, the general ones I should say, since, you know, during the forms of September, which I think Piglet has already established that ever since in Yoshi's Crafted World Let's Play so far, so even then I just want to classify that again, just for the sake of, like, for those who missed out on that specific discussion, so... Oh jeez, things doesn't work out for the films of 2020 so far, guys. I really must admit though for this point, because I was really expecting to able to see that the new James Bond film after all during the films of likely in day 1 on the 3rd of April, but too bad it has been delayed once again, but except the fact that with the actual stupid coronavirus system. I'm sorry, this whole little actual aspect of this coronavirus is all about ranting, but I usually don't hate ranting per se. That's only because of how the fact that, well, it's so annoying. It's really, really annoying whenever you're trying to think to yourself about the fact that everything else goes super successful so far. But then again, because of the stupid coronavirus, yeah, I'm gonna keep on calling it that because the coronavirus is actually the worst aspect about the year. In fact, I will say for this matter, for this point right now, that the actual coronavirus system is the weakest part about this year. I'm really hoping that it will not affect the actual thing during the forms of Tokyo 2020 Olympics during at some point in summer, just because I'm super looking forward to that specific matter, especially that we're really looking forward to doing a Let's Play of Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games Tokyo 2020 for the Nintendo Switch, of course. Bunnies sometimes recycle the scenery from other games. Oh, kind of a unique title for this minigame. And once again, it's going to be another shooting gallery kind of minigame, except now, well, kind of thinking about it though, it sort of feels like the exact same environment as we've already done from before, except now there's going to be a little bit more chances of getting hit most of the time, because this is where the actual shooting range minigames gets a little bit longer. Well, not so necessarily longer, but it's more accurately a lot more tricky and difficult than the forms of how it does it on the previous ones this time around, because, well, for one noticeable thing is the fact that every time you miss one of your aiming shots, well, I don't know if I can necessarily try to say that for this point, because, well, if you ever played those previous shooting range minigames before, oh jeez, I almost got caught off guard by the forms of the tougher variations of, oh wow, we're actually doing not that great, especially how the fact that sometimes my Wii Remote aiming accuracy wasn't exactly all that great, but even then I will hopefully try to cope with it. So anyway, let's just go ahead and continue things on and dodge these boulders here, or the rocks if you want to be more precise with. So even then though, oh jeez, I wasn't fast, I was not fast after all. Oh jeez, anyway, let's just go ahead and take on these little UFOs right here, so hopefully we would be able to rank up some more points, as you can clearly tell. So even then though, yeah, that's as far as I can usually try to discuss upon for this point, guys, because this is getting frustrating, and especially noticeable how ridiculous this stupid coronavirus system is going to affect on ourselves. But then again, I'm really hoping I'm not going to get one, obviously, because I just want to take care of my own life, along with, well, Sonic, Shadow, and the ponies, and especially noticeable with the Powerpuff Girls, and even the blue birds, or in this case, Macaw birds, like Blue and Jewel, and even Tiana, the Sonic's girlfriend. But either way though, that's as far as how it usually goes. So anyways, let's go ahead and keep on shooting some more Rabbids, and hopefully we're also able to pick up more health, because otherwise we're pretty much at the halfway point of the actual health bar at the moment. So if what happens if you do manage to able to run out of all of your health, well, you have to go all the way back to the beginning portion of that specific shooting range kind of gallery, so that's as far as I can usually try to discuss upon for that specific point right there. But anyways, let's go ahead and climb onto that little ladder right there, so hopefully we would able to, just to see how the fact that there are so many more Rabbids to shoot down. So even then, I was gonna, oh, okay. Thankfully I didn't manage to shoot that one over there, just from the distance over there. Usually kind of think about it, the actual environment like this is almost like exactly the same place, as in we've already done this, as in the actual racing syndrome, except, well, the biggest difference is now is the fact that this is all in a shooting range, so yeah, that's as far as I can usually decide to able to think about it for ourselves for a moment. So anywho, Then again, as far as this point in time, folks, I really must confess at this point about the fact that I'm actually kind of slightly annoyed for this point today. Not just because of the forms of the actual, the coronavirus thing is still existent, but also I'm very, very mad about the fact that one of my most highly anticipated films has been delayed in joining films of like 8 months time. So even then though, at least I can understand back in 2019 that the reason why I'm actually glad that the Sonic the Hedgehog movie has been delayed during 2020, just because they have to redesign Sonic's design, which I'm super happy for it still, and especially noticeable how the fact that, oh jeez, that almost gonna hit me. Anyways, let's go ahead and take those Rabbids down, and hopefully we'll able to actually just destroy a lot more robots here and there, and especially noticeable with these UFO saucers, Rabbids, as you can clearly see on screen. So there's going to be a lot of emphasis on destroying a lot of like Rabbids robots for the majority of the time, specifically when we get to the very end of the actual sequences like so. So at least expecting of such. So anyways, let's go ahead and save one plunger to shoot that Rabbid over there, so that way we can able to get ourselves a perfect rating. Oh, these guys are back. You know, I'm not a big fan of those particular springy Rabbid enemies, because most of the time they always get in my way when it comes to likely trying to able to aim for certain stuff. Specifically, if I was trying to able to be dead on with the dead on with that shot, sometimes though that my accuracy aiming wasn't exactly the most well, inevitable as far as I can usually try to tell for that point. So, but I digress. So then again, not much else I can talk about otherwise, because even then though, I'm really hoping during forms of tomorrow that I can able to actually make my moody go for this little better mood for this point tomorrow. So at least expecting that I would able to make it happen during the forms of tomorrow. So aside from all that stuff though, that's the actual news I can discuss for this point, guys, because I know that most people seem to find this pretty upsetting about the fact that, well, you know, the film has now been delayed now. Anyways, let's take care of the actual the Super Bunny, and then as soon as we get closer to the Baby Glow box, then everything else seems to be fun and dandy for the most part, despite with these Rabbids they managed to get closer to us, but at least we did manage to get ourselves a nice pickup, such as the actual repeated shooting kind of plunger item, even though it only lasts for about a few seconds notice. So even then though, let's go ahead and, oh my goodness gracious, not only do we get that exact same robot, but also, oh jeez, 3 robots that we need to deal with. But anyways, just like before, we need to take down those 3 Rabbids robots, as you can see right there. Despite, as you can see, that I have to quickly reload in my plungers, as you can see, to able to take on one of those Rabbids robots, as you can see. But thankfully though, these are pretty simple to take down, especially noticeable you have to desperately need to keep an eye out with the actual the missiles and stuff. So even then though, that pretty much takes care of from that particular boss minigame. So either way though, I think this was now the 9th Baby Glow box, if I could recall that, because even then though, that we actually did manage to rescue 9 of them. So even then though, until whenever we get into the forms of day 14, and especially noticeable on day 15, that we'll discuss more about it until tomorrow. So even then though, here's the number 13th plunger, so that way we've now finally got that. And we now ended up on day number 14, but then again though, we'll save that until in tomorrow's video. And unfortunately, seemingly to say, that we haven't got exactly that much costumes to begin with for the sake of time. So usually, relatively speaking, we'll mainly focusing on Rayman himself for the majority at the end. So even then, we'll go ahead and end things off here. So join me tomorrow for more of Let's Play of Rayman Raving Rabbids. It's the fact that we might as well conclude this game for going for day 14 and 15. So see you guys tomorrow. Later, fellas.